The Snakes torpedo the Yankees and the Marte Party is continuing forever. All this and more coming up on the T-Backs podcast. Don't go anywhere.
Perdomo makes the play.
And a high fly ball. No doubt about this. Home run Marte.
They're going to send the ball all the way around. Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
I'm Ivan Melendez.
Luis Gonzalez.
I'm Tori Lavello, and you're listening to the T-Backs podcast.
T-Backs podcast.
T-Backs podcast.
Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the T-Backs podcast, where we bring you all the hottest Arizona Diamondbacks tea and talk from across the pond here in London. I'm your host, GB Diamondback, proud to be hosting the newest episode of Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. It's been a busy week for the Diamondbacks with a scrappy but effective series win against the Yankees and their borderline illegal bats. And then some breaking news that came later that Ketel Marte and the Marte Party is here to stay. Nice rhyming that, huh? You're getting all of that for free, folks. I've got my piping hot cup of regular Irish breakfast tea and a nice little twist on an English breakfast. It's a bit heartier, a bit bolder, nice flavor. And let's get right into the breakdown. It's been a pretty up and down series against the Yankees. 3-game series that the Diamondbacks ended up winning game by game. Let's have a look at it. Corbin Burnes sort of scrapped his way through game 1. Looked pretty okay. K'd 5 straight at one point. Did end up getting rattled by Anthony Volpe, the New York Yankees shortstop, who was batting with what was essentially a wooden 2x4 plank. Not exactly hard to hit a sort of a cheap Yankee Stadium home run when that's the kind of bat that you're using, but I'm not going to go ahead and say that the Yankees' success is all down to them using the so-called torpedo bats. You know, they are a successful franchise in their own right. They have good players, so I'm not going to be one of those uber haters. If it was the Dodgers doing this, that would be another question, but unfortunately it's not. But, you know, luckily Gino Suarez was around anyway to pop a grand slam into left and doodle the Yankees a little bit. Burnes, you know, did okay. 8 strikeouts is solid, even if, you know, 4 1/3 innings is less length out of him than we'd realistically like from a starter, and a starter making their first start of the season at any rate. We also have to say the defense behind him didn't really help either. Ultimately, it was the first time that some of these infield relationships had really been tested, and it was definitely the first time they had been tested in a major league game. And we definitely need to have some couples therapy going on between Josh Naylor at first base and Burnes on the bag. The kind of lack of confidence and communication between the two of them costs the D-backs 2 runs alone. It was a basic and simple ground ball to the first baseman. Should have flipped it over to the pitcher covering the bag. Josh Naylor sort of underhands it right over Corbin Burnes' head, and it wasn't even like he threw it a little early or a little too hard. He properly yeeted that thing like 2 foot over Corbin Burnes' glove, and that ended up costing the Diamondbacks 2 runs. So that it was really kind of derailed Burnes' fairly successful outing so far, and that's probably what was one of the major causes leading to Burnes getting the hook a little bit early. I'm not going to be one of those Diamondbacks fans who cries and pulls the alarm about Naylor's defense yet, because we as a fan base have been used to Cole Glover over there at first base, Christian Walker, and now he is gone. Naylor is a very different mold of first baseman, but brings his own kind of value. There is, however, a little bit of a silver lining to Corbin Burnes' somewhat short first appearance, and that was the Diamondbacks bullpen getting to do their stuff. It's slightly different bullpen, a lot of new faces in there. One of those new faces came in relief for Corbin Burnes to start, and that was Jalen Beeks, who's a recent acquisition from the Colorado Rockies, who, you know, aren't exactly known for being a super successful pitching organization. Obviously, playing up there at mile high, 3 miles high, 8 miles high, however high Rocky Stadium is, it's not exactly a pitcher's paradise by any stretch of the imagination. But Diamondbacks, somewhat under the radar, did sign Jalen Beeks. I think somewhat in response to Kevin Ginkel going on to the 15-day IL. And he came in for pretty much an almost perfect 1 1/3 innings of work. He was followed by Shelby Miller, who has looked pretty amazing since he's arrived, and I'm so here for the Shelby Miller Arizona Diamondbacks redemption arc. Miller was followed up by Justin Martinez, who struck out the side as well, and then it was AJ Puck who was the nomination for the closer spot in that particular situation, and I think he's pretty much the winner of the closer spot in practice, if not in title at the moment. And he got the job done where perhaps many of us had been watching through one eye or from behind the couch. And it was that man, Gino Suarez, again, who came up with the runs in the 8th inning. And, let's also not forget Corbin Carroll getting their first homer of the year for a 2-run shot after an excellent at-bat walk worked by Geraldo Perdomo, which, should surprise nobody. Perdomo, of course, we all know how effective he is at getting himself on base, and he makes his on bases count. If Perdomo's been on base, and it's always gonna be he's good at scoring runs. He's got good base running speed around the base paths, and that made Corbin Carroll's runs doubly as hurtful and doubly as effective against the Yankees on that nicely deposited home run. So overall, the Diamondbacks got through it in game 1, and that's what ultimately matters. Keeping the momentum rolling, let's talk Zach Gallen. After a tough opening day where the Cubs got the better of the Milkman, Zach Gallen was electric in game 2 of the series in the cold on the road at the Yankees. He struck out 13 and was using all of his pitches to great effect to silence a Yankees offense that really has had a great start to the year. He's generated 13 of 24 of his whiffs on the beautiful knuckle curveball, and we all know how good. That can be, and tied his career high at 13, and probably should have broken his record with 14 if not for some somewhat questionable umpiring calls. The offense, for once, did its job to support an amazing start by the Milkman, and that included some Pena power off the bat of Juan Lourdes Gurriel Jr., which we always love to see. But perhaps more importantly, the defense finally got their act together and cut out the silly errors that have been uncharacteristically plaguing the side so far this year. And that includes a special mention to Geraldo Perdomo producing a crazy diving catch all the way out in center field. Not really sure why he felt the need to go on a small marathon when Jake McCarthy probably had it covered all day long, but that's, not a complaint. Domo is basically the team captain. I say let him do what he wants. Tea break. The bullpen appearances were solid once again from all-star legend Joe Manaply and an okay job by Ryan Thompson. And AJ Puck came in to close it again. Struggled a little, letting the game go a wee bit close for comfort, giving up what some are calling a Little League homer to Anthony Volpe and his torpedo bat, which, a fun little stat about that home run, it had an XBA of 60. And you are hearing that right. I am saying 60, not 600. If you're not a stats nerd and you don't really know how XBA works, that means that home run is a fly ball and an out 94% of the time. It's only a homer in 2 Major League ballparks. One of them is, of course, Yankee Stadium, which we all know about that really dodgy right field and how shallow it is and how easy it is to hit homers there. But then the Yankees' other stadium, Steinbrenner Field, which does count as a Major League ballpark this year down in Florida, which is where the Rays are currently playing. So it was a very cheap 3 runs, to say the least, off of the torpedo bat of Anthony Volpe. And, Anthony Volpe's not hitting that as a home run without the torpedo bat. There is no way he's making the same kind of connection if he's not using the torpedo bat. So, in the words of my father-in-law, who is a Yankees fan and is a listener of the podcast as well, they either should be banned league-wide with no questions asked, or every team and every player should use them. There's no middle ground. And frankly, if that's what Anthony Volpe needs to actually be a good hitter, I say ban it, because then it's just giving already good teams an even more unfair advantage. But still, enough griping about that. AJ Puck did earn the save, despite the homer. Let's not forget he did induce a flyout and a strikeout on Dominguez to end the game. And Torey Lovullo, previously he said he's not planning on naming a closer. I don't think he's going to change his mind on that unless J Mart manages to somehow be even better than he has been already. It's kind of hard to envision Justin Martinez being even better. Like, he comes in, he strikes out the side, he goes and sits down again, and he's done that pretty much whenever that we have needed him to do that. So, how much better does J Mart have to be? Like, he already throws 102 mile an hour fastball, sinker, splitter. What more can he do? Does he have to throw like the fastest MLB pitch ever recorded, which I think it's a 106 miles an hour, which was rounded up from a 105.5, if I'm remembering that correctly? Does J Mart have to throw a 200 mile an hour pitch? Burn a hole straight through a catcher's hand? What's J Mart got to do to be even better than he is now? I really don't see that. I think maybe it might be just a mental thing, perhaps. Like, J Mart thrives in all of these amazing high pressure, big moment scenarios. He's very rarely crumbled under that pressure, but maybe Torey thinks he might just be a bit too young to be given that job full time, and maybe he needs a couple of years or 18 months or one more season to develop that. If that is the case, I think that's a fairly sensible approach. I'm not going to go and argue against that, but I think in Game 2, AJ Puck was the best guy for the job in the moment. Very much the late inning lefty option. J Mart, of course, is the undisputed righty, and I think there's a small chance in some cases you might see Kevin Ginkel in certain situations when he's back from the injury list, and I'm not against that either. Ginkel very much has that reputation for, big inning, big moments guys, especially later on in the year. Was electric in our run to the playoffs and the postseason in 2023. So yeah, if you want to give Kevin Ginkel some late inning relief, high stakes scenarios, I say yeah, why not? Now, time to talk about Game 3. Game 3 was a pretty rough one for Merrill Kelly. He got hit, and he got hit a lot, and he got hit hard. 9 earned runs is the worst start of his major league career. And I know people will say, Torpedo bat this, Yankee Stadium that, yada, yada, yada. But I think we all know the real reason for yesterday's blitz. Charity. Merrill played his part in the script in a movie story where the Yankees player J.C. Escarra, who previously was an Uber driver part-time to fund their independent baseball career, played their first game since making the roster and gets their first hit. What a nice guy Merrill Kelly is for letting that happen. Now, if it's not already apparent, I am joking. Merrill Kelly is not following a Major League Baseball script. Major League Baseball isn't scripted unless it's in favor of the Dodgers. So, obviously Merrill Kelly just had an off day. But, seriously, I'm going to repeat what I said last week. It's too damn early to hit the panic button. Merrill had an off day. That happens once or twice in every 10 or so starts for him. If he had 10 good days out of 10 every time he started, he would be the ace, and probably would be the ace for a much bigger market team than the Diamondbacks. But he's not good 10 times out of 10. Merrill Kelly is pretty good and 75% of the time and lights out a following 10%. That still leaves 15% where he's going to have a pretty rough time of it and could get hit hard. And against the Yankees with torpedo bats at Yankee Stadium, if you're going to get hit hard, it's always going to produce a lot of runs. But he's still good. He's an upper middle of the order starter on a relatively good team, and he is a good pitcher, and he is still a good pitcher, and you will definitely see a lot more evidence of that this year without a shadow of a doubt. And yeah, I like Merrill a lot, and perhaps some of you are going to say, yeah, I'm biased, like, da-da-da-da-da. You went on the D-backs dispatch and you talked about how Merrill Kelly went to the same high school as your wife. Yeah, that's true. I like Merrill, and I think he's had a fun path to the major leagues, going and playing in Korea and sort of fighting his way back and doing what it takes to rebuild his pitching style. And the fact he can throw pretty much any pitch at any time and throw sequencing out the window, that is a huge asset to have. And people very much forget that about Merrill Kelly when, he ends up throwing a batting practice fastball low and slightly to the outside for Aaron Judge to smoke a million miles and send it to the flipping moon. That is not the pitcher that Merrill Kelly is every time he goes out onto the mound and picks up a baseball in an Arizona Diamondbacks uniform. Merrill Kelly is a better pitcher than that, and he will not do that every time he pitches. So let's not hit the panic eject switch just yet. Merrill Kelly will come good. And I think the value of a guy like Merrill, especially in that number 3 slot for the Diamondbacks, shouldn't be underestimated. And I'm happy for him to fly under the radar and let teams keep underestimating him so he can keep on surprising people and delivering kind of crucial knockout punches when we might actually need them most. People have talked about, any potential postseason baseball the Diamondbacks will play. Having that 1-2 punch of Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, Corbin Burns, depending on how the order works out, is going to be pretty good. But Merrill Kelly is that third when you need him, and, that could be, the first game on the road. It's a good resource to have, and I don't think we should underestimate that by any stretch of the imagination. And Merrill Kelly's a good pitcher. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Right, tea break. Ugh. But from a player who perhaps wasn't the best to a player who definitely was on the top of his form, one of the big performers of that game in Game 3 was the leader of the answerbacks, Geraldo Perdomo. Popped his first ever home run right-handed against a righty over the wall for a grand slam to kickstart the almost comeback. Now, Geraldo Perdomo turning into one of the Diamondbacks' primary power-hitting sluggers definitely wasn't on my bingo card for this year, but I am certainly not complaining. He's got such huge intrinsic value to this team. So to see him breaking out even more than the kind of caliber that saw him named to the All-Star roster in 2023 is great news for the Diamondbacks. Perdomo is obviously part of this great core spine of players who've all signed extensions recently, and it's keeping that middle infield locked down alongside Ketel Marte. And looking forward this year, that gives me so much confidence. Diamondbacks fans have plenty of reasons to be cheerful. Now, yesterday Ketel was rested for that game, which is somewhat of a coincidence, I think, with Garrett Hampson back in at second, which I know many of you weren't happy about, but Ketel is a key asset to this team, so why would we risk him in a Game 3 where we've already earned the series win? We are not at the point where one game without a star player is going to decide our season already. There's already good vibes all round, with Ketel's extension likely meaning he'll end his career as a Diamondback. And when you think about it, that's actually insane news. Listening to a couple of reactions to this on other podcasts this morning, many people are starting to talk about, is Ketel Marte perhaps, and I'm going to whisper this because I know it might upset people, but is Ketel Marte actually the greatest Diamondbacks player of all time? That's crazy to say, right? But then you start thinking about it, and he actually has comparable achievements. He's got a walk-off hit to win a playoff series and clinch a pennant. He's going to have served the club for pretty much all of their, or at least all the significant majority of their major league career. And he is such an important part of the culture in the clubhouse and in the stands. Extending him, if you have the money to do so, is absolutely a no-brainer. So what I really don't get is how the infighting in the Diamondbacks fan base can be this bad right now. Like, come on, guys and gals. We just won a series against the Yankees, for crying out loud. That's not something that, even with the absolute hype train that was the Diamondbacks fan base at the start of this year, that's not necessarily something that we would have taken for granted. It's not necessarily something we were all expecting. I'm sure some of you are whining in the comments like, oh, but Benji, we're fourth in the division, and the Dodgers and the Padres went unbeaten, and even the Giants are good now, so we clearly suck. Keep the faith, my snaky friends. I think we all wrote off trying to fight the Dodgers this year the moment we saw that MLB's socials tweeted about them for 20-something posts in a row before the season even began. The league loves them. They have infinitely deep pockets. We probably don't stand a chance at fighting with them as things are right now. But what I don't see is the kind of core strength and depth that the Diamondbacks have over in San Diego or San Francisco, who at time of recording are ahead of us in the division. The kind of form that they've both kicked off the season with really never lasts. And you really got to wonder if the Pards and the Giants have pushed it too hard too fast. The MLB season is, at the end of the day, a marathon, not a sprint. And yeah, I'm aware that's a cliche, but I believe that the division will even out as the summer progresses. Are you still not convinced? Well, Pavin Smith hasn't faced Justin Verlander yet. We all know how that will go, and that could sink their whole ship at a critical point in the race for the playoffs. And then when it comes to the Padres, do you remember when they were signing Roki Sasaki? And then they didn't? Ultimately, Dylan Cease and Yu Darvish isn't enough to hold them the whole way. As good as both of those guys are, they've been talking about a potential roster reset and rebuild since missing out on the World Series last year. And can a Jackson Merrill extension really hold everything together? Luis Arias at second base is slumping hard. And sweeping a Braves team who are imploding kind of all by themselves right now isn't enough to convince me that the brown and yellow can go the distance the same way I think the Snakes can. Now, they do have the Athletics and the Rockies coming up next, so could probably pad the win column a bit more through the next couple of weeks, whereas the Diamondbacks have the Nats and the Orioles, who aren't superpowers but have plenty of pop in their own right. As long as Torrey stays the course and stops randomly resting players when we need them, the day before they're due to have an off day anyway, as well, Torrey, please, for everyone's health and safety, please stop doing that. But I do think things will be just fine. We have 3 games at home to the Marlins and 3 on the road to the Rays this month. Both of those are bona fide surf and turf Florida sweeps if the Snakes play like we know they're capable of. Fingers crossed, everybody. Put your lucky underpants on. Remember that the Snakes are alive. Keep the faith. Let's look ahead now, and it's a few hours at the time of recording to the start of the series against the Nationals, and I will be doing a reaction to that series in my usual time frame at the end of the weekend. I'm not quite sure what that series is going to look like, to be honest with you. I have Mackenzie Gore, the Nationals pitcher, in my fantasy draft. He's had a pretty amazing start to the year, but if I've done my maths correctly, I don't think we're going to see him in this series because of how their rotation works. And it's kind of hard for me to name another Nationals pitcher. That just shows you how little I actually know ball outside of the NL West. The Nationals still have CJ Abrams? I think they do, don't they? He's quite good, right? And sorry, Nationals fans, your new City Connects suck. If the leaks of the new Diamondbacks Serpientes with the teal and the purple, but like the electric teal, are anything to go by, ours aren't that much better, but sorry, to go from like the cherry blossoms to that blue thing that the Nationals are wearing as their new City Connect, sorry, that's disappointing. And for that alone, I'm going to predict a Diamondbacks series win against the Nationals this time around. I'm going to wrap the episode up there. I want to say thank you very much to the friends of the show over at Home Run Travel. If you're one of my listeners in the UK and you want to go and see some amazing baseball some point this summer, you can join one of 2 trips being run by Home Run Travel Company. Go West Coast, come with me. Check out Seattle, Los Angeles, Anaheim, San Francisco, and San Diego. Or if you feel like, maybe hitting up New York, Boston, Baltimore, Philadelphia, check out the East Coast tour and join some super passionate fans coming over from the UK for the only UK-based baseball travel company. And don't miss out on your spot because places are filling up fast. I'd also like to give a quick shout out at the end of this episode over to everyone who subscribed to the podcast over on YouTube. We passed 300 subscribers overnight last night, and I put out a little sappy, crying my eyes out post on socials about it. But thank you to everyone who has supported the journey of this podcast so far. The guys over at AZ Snake Pit, D-Backs Dispatch. There's too many of you guys to actually name, but you know who you are if you've supported the show. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to continue to do what we do over here on the T-Backs podcast. We are proud to be Arizona's #1 baseball and beverage podcast. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.